So welcome to I would say our 11th installment of Introduction to Stargazing in Natural Night Skies. My name is Sammy Castonguay. I live here in Ontario, Oregon, with the Friends of the Owyhee. We are a conservation advocacy group, stewardship, as well as responsible outdoor recreation of the Owyhee region. So a whole 7 million acre region to the south that the Owyhee River drains this desert steppes area. I'm also a astronomy instructor at Treasure Valley Community College, winter astronomy. As we have found, looking around us, it's starting to get dark a lot earlier. So that's the perfect time. This is the perfect season to go out stargazing. Might be a little bit cold, but as the sun goes down, clear skies, we get a nice view of the night sky. But mostly my gig is geology. I'm a geologist by background, and really I got into the night sky by camping on late summer nights and talking to my friends about if anybody knows anything about the stars. And after a few years of not knowing anything about the stars, decided to learn more through stargazing is really how I got started, and also took a planetary geology class. So that got me started here at TVCC. Well, thank you all for joining us. And in past archived material, I really front load this number one in our outline, the gear that I would suggest for a comfortable stargazing experience. So I'll move fastly through that tonight, or quickly through that, so you can go review that archive material. Then similarly, setting awareness and process of stargazing is really important. I feel like from the instructor point of view, when I'm going through teaching students stargazing techniques, but really that's what we're all doing here tonight, right? We're students of stargazing. So in order for you to have the most comfortable experience, it starts with setting some awareness in your knowledge and space, and then setting a process so you can really internalize and learn this stuff. Then I'd like to take a little bit more time tonight to talk about the importance of natural night skies, or dark night skies, right? And the effect of light pollution. Then lastly, tonight's main topic, if you've been following us on Facebook and looking forward to the event, then I wanted to talk a little bit more about Ursa Major and the Pleaides small constellation. And actually both of those together. Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about star mythology, which has not really been a topic that I've covered in the past. We've spent most of our time looking at individual constellations, relating them to one another. But I'll talk a little bit tonight about the importance of myth and storytelling when trying to learn the constellations. Okay, so here's the 3 intro slides on some gear you would need for stargazing, or that I suggest, setting your awareness and process. So in the upper left-hand corner there, I have some warm clothes, examples of warm clothes, and then an example of a star wheel. Okay, this is an analog kind of device, but you can also download Stellarium for your space phone app, or for your space phone. And those can be really useful tools for navigating the night sky, whether you're in the comfort of your office or comfort of in your home, or as you're journeying outside, to just remind yourself of some of the constellations that should be coming up over the eastern horizon, or setting over the western horizon. So I would highly suggest for an experience that's enjoyable and fun and informative, that you become prepared, that you go out prepared, right? So watching the stargazing material is one way to prepare, but resources, right? It always helps to have your own resources accessible so you can review this stuff later. Okay, warm clothes, why? Well, it can get kind of chilly out there at night. So bundle up, or else you're not going to have a very good experience. Grab some hot cocoa, something to keep you warmed up. And if you like to take notes about your experience and still like journaling, it can help us internalize the material, then it's best to have a red headlamp or a red light. The red wavelength of light won't affect your rods and cones as much for light blindness. So if you're using a red light, it's a little bit more sensitive so you can take good notes. And of course, Stellarium and other mobile apps also come with a red view. Okay, then it's really important, as I tell students, to start by setting your awareness. If you go outside, go stargazing just to bathe in the night sky, that's awesome and that's fun and that's fine, and keep doing that. But a slight advantage to knowing the constellations is you become more comfortable with them, and they almost seem like old friends after a while. To start doing this, get to know your directions. So I have a little compass, a navigation compass there. Kind of start acknowledging where north is at, wherever you go, wherever you are outside. That can help put you in space, especially in the location that you're going to stargaze. Then acknowledge the season and what constellations are coming up and going down. Acknowledge what time the sun sets, or maybe if you're doing morning sun stargazing, what time the sun rises. And then also acknowledging what phase the moon is in can be really helpful. If you are going out to see the darkest of the dark, to see all of the stars you can possibly see, then a nice big bright moon actually might be distracting. Not only does it bleed throughout the night sky, but also our mind seems to our attention gravitate towards the brightest light in the sky, and the moon can be captivating then, right? So be it as it might, the moon can be a little distracting, but you can still see wonderful constellations, the brightest of the stars, during a full moon, which we are almost in here on Friday. So acknowledging the moon phase is also good. Then I like to also acknowledge, this is a kind of a fun exercise, and you can all do this at home. I actually don't see any cameras on, so no one else will see you. But if you hold your arms, or your hand rather, at arm length away, then because of our human anatomy, the ratio of your fist at shoulder width away compared to your ocular vision, okay, it's about the same for all of us. So a fist like this is about 10 degrees. If you open up into like a shaka, right, then that's about 18 degrees. And getting to know these measurements can really help while navigating the night sky. So a little bit later tonight, I'll say go 10 degrees east of of Marek, the Dipper star. So things like that can really help us set our awareness in space. Okay. Then lastly, it's really important to set a process, right? Just like routine brushing your teeth or washing your hair, it really helps to set a process around stargazing, because it helps internalize a lot. So I mentioned notes; those can be handy, but just focusing on one place, deciding where you're going to look, learn, and practice, okay, can really help you advance through stargazing. Okay. There's also a book there, Walk Through the Heavens, that I would recommend. A lot of my introductory stargazing knowledge came directly from this book, Learning the Night Sky as a Map, kind of like where one state touches another, one constellation space touches another, and you can easily navigate from one to the other using stars and distances, degree distances. Okay. So I'd like to talk about these 4 points on the importance of natural night skies. Number 1, this is a cultural resource. I'll expand on that a little bit, talk a little bit about light pollution and some solutions simply. Then the importance of citizen science. So that's you out there collecting data that can be very useful for understanding the darkness of different regions. Using dark sky measurements. And then I want to also show a few slides regarding the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network and the area that we as Friends of the Owyhee recreate in and steward and are conservation advocates for. So dark night skies fall under our advocacy pillar here at Friends of the Owyhee. And I'll start off with saying, if you like stars, if you like the dark night sky, then become an advocate for dark night sky. Okay, visit the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network under Travel Oregon, or the International Dark Sky Network. Okay, so what do I mean by a cultural resource? Okay, as I like to tell my students, the night sky has been like our television for thousands and thousands of years as we've been growing as human beings. So I like to call this the Caveman Perspective portion of my course, where we are getting in touch with some of these early experiences of humanity that we seem to be gravitating away from as we come inside and come under our artificial lights, and not really kind of take for granted the night sky. Take it for granted so much that we'll put up a big bright light that bleeds out all this light pollution without really even thinking of it. So a first step in dark night sky advocacy is reminding ourselves that this is a multicultural, thousands of years, that's hundreds of generations long, shared cultural resource that we have globally. So here's a few examples of that. I like the movie The Croods. When my children were littler, of course, we watched that. But there's this really cool scene where Guy takes the family up above the canopy, and they're outside in the dark for one of the first times in their lives, and they look up at the milky band of stars and sky above them, and they are just phenomenally impressed, as we or you might feel when you see this as well. Back in 2017, there was an eclipse, so a day star eclipse, where the moon traveled over the sun and eclipsed it, and we were right here in Ontario, Oregon in totality for that eclipse. So we had a big kind of get together at Treasure Valley Community College. We had over 400 local elementary through high school students come to all view the eclipse together. It was a big cultural event based around the sky. And, you know, it might have been during the day, but this is still the night sky. It's happening out there in the heavens. And I was quoted in the newspaper as calling it a caveman-like experience. So what I mean really is not this a derogatory perspective of a caveman as, you know, dragging around clubs or anything, but really almost an honorable sense of our past, our ancestors, our relatives for thousands of years. No matter which culture on the earth you come from, there is likely star stories in your cultural history and background. So right here, this is a cave drawing that's about 14,000 years old from Central Africa, where this person, interpreted as a shamanistic person, is thought to be wearing a blanket over them that's a tapestry of the stars. And then we have Stonehenge, that's also well known to be aligned to things like the equinox and solstice to help these agrarian people tune their time of year. And then up in the upper right-hand corner, even to the stories that we talk about during Christmas time that have their origins from the movement of the stars above us seasonally. Things like the pyramids in Egypt, things like the pyramids at Teotihuacan that are arranged as sort of a map of the night sky or of these really important stars. Then also in the lower right down here, I have the Greek or Greco-Roman constellation of Orion that will come up a little bit tonight. And then in blue right here, recognizing from where Casey and I come from, South Dakota, the home of the Lakota, that also have, and this is a wonderful publication, all of this wonderful star knowledge, telling the star stories in a different way, right? In a way that jives with their culture and their place, recognizing their places, geography around them. Okay, so this is just a slide to recognize the importance of this cultural resource to humanity globally, right? That the night sky and looking up at the stars is very important. Okay, probably preaching to the choir because you're all here to learn more about the stars. Okay, very good. Here is a just one of the many resources and light pollution maps that's available, but this is the one that I'd recommend from CIRRUS, the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences at University of Colorado Boulder. And they have on citing Fauci et al. That was published back in I think this was in 2019. But this is using computer modeling of all of the existing lights and population to make a computer model map of the light pollution that's creeping into dark areas around the world. So just taking a look at the continent that I'm coming from, the North America, you can see, you know, over here at the eastern seaboard, we have lots of brighter lights. The brighter colors, or the warmer colors, are more light pollution measured here in candelas. And then the cooler colors, and then of course black, are the low light pollution areas. So maybe this is part of why I'm such a night sky advocate. Is my whole life, whether that's been in South Dakota or coming over here out to the west in Oregon, I've been able to access dark night skies. And maybe I've taken that for granted for portions of my life, but certainly today, and as an adult, visiting locations where at night, going out, you can't quite see the same constellations you can in the good old dark night skies. Okay, so to kind of address light pollution, there are some kind of low-hanging solutions that are out there. Well, first of all, using lighting that makes sense, or at least being an advocate for using lighting that makes sense. Whether this is you at your house, you know, making this decision, or whether this is your whole municipality, your whole town that's deciding via city council or whoever it is, the decision makers, or maybe even the county that's deciding, you know what, maybe all of the lights that we should put up, or that we put up publicly or even privately, we have some standards around these things. So that way, over here, the unshielded lights that are blasting up light up into space where nobody uses the light, right? It's just pollution in that case. If we just simply cap it, partially shield or fully shield the light and project it down to the ground where we actually use the light, not only are we saving electricity and wisely using these resources, but then in context of this discussion, we are not polluting the dark, rich night skies with light that's not useful. So that's kind of a low-hanging solution. And those are some of the things that we're working on here in the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. And then a second solution then is to identify these areas that are dark, right? In that last map that are dark, but we have light pollution creeping in from the sides. So using that first solution, lighting that makes sense, we can target these dark areas. And before the light pollution begins to creep in, we can sort of make these agreements of dark sky places where any lights that are put within these places are already fully shielded, right? Or they cooperate with reducing the amount of light pollution in the area, okay? Now, in order to define these dark sky places, and here's a couple of links to those, in order to define these, we have to have data. So the previous map that I showed you was a computer model that's based on the population and lights coming from major centers. That's different than some of the satellite collected data also, which can be useful. So this is where you come in, right? Well, also the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. We're looking at this polygon right over here that is dark, and we want to prevent the encroachment of these lights in the side. So this is where you come in if you live anywhere within these dark regions, or even in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. You can still collect data on how dark the night sky actually is where you live, because again, these were coming from computer models. So if we can gather actual data with sky quality meters or using the Globe at Night app, or excuse me, website, then we can get real on the ground data of how dark these places are. So exactly how dark is really to be determined. So I've been using our friends of the Owyhee handy dandy dark sky quality meter. to do some of this. And it turns out that we've actually put a couple of these things locally in our area for you to check out from the library. So I believe Lori already has some over at the Harney County Library. There's a kit to check out that includes a sky quality meter. Way easy to use. There's one button, okay? And it has the meter on the sky reading side. And you just point that up to the zenith, okay? Dark area of the sky. Push the button. It does a little couple of beep, beep things. And then you look down and it has the number, record those numbers, and that goes into the Globe at Night website. So it's pretty easy to use in these kits. And then also in the kit is a red flashlight, is a night sky resource, so you can look at constellations. We also have some at the Ontario Community Library if you live local to Ontario or happen to be just passing by and going camping. And then potentially at the one of our partners, the Vale Library. And then there's also a museum, a heritage museum in Jordan Valley that we're working on getting a couple of these for folks in Jordan Valley that are way out there in the dark, dark, dark skies to be able to collect some of this data. So if you're interested, the library is totally ready for you to just come by and grab one of these, or you can email us to ask a little bit more about these kits. Okay. I've mentioned a couple of times Globe at Night. We are coming up on the November/December collection period, November 25th to December 4th. Go ahead and visit this website tonight, or even right now while we're going through this, and get ready for that collection period. A couple of other apps that I'll acknowledge. There's the Loss of Night app, which is pretty similar to Globe at Night, but they are different systems. And the Globe at Night is a global citizen data collection project. So please use that. Then also your phone apparently does have some kind of dark sky meter, but I don't know exactly how reliable that data is. I think it's just a really good proxy based on a couple of things that come native in your phone, but it still is good data collection that gives a good proxy. So if that's what you have, then please use it. On the Globe at Night website, it'll take you through the 6 really easy things to do. Making your observations, clicking geography, or also to collect your GPS location via satellite, where you're coming from. And then the main question here is, how dark is the sky? And it'll actually give you a chart looking at the Perseus constellation on which stars can you see around the Perseus constellation. So there's, again, a guide on Globe at Night to help you find that. And then the sky conditions are also important to note, whether this is a partially cloudy sky or a clouded sky. And then if you use a sky quality meter to go ahead and enter those data and then to send it off to Globe at Night. Okay, so we can really understand all of the actual darkness of the globe. So please check it out tonight and get ready for that collection period. Okay, at 5:55, we're getting ready for the meat of tonight's material to learn a few, well, I wouldn't say new constellations because we have covered this material. If you're looking for the recap in last month's material in October, was, I think, well, it's going to be the last time, but it was the last time that I took a few minutes to just describe or recapitulate each month and some of the content that we had gone through. But again, visiting the Friends of the Owyhee YouTube page, you can see what's archived there. So tonight I'm going to use material that I presented back in February, is a long time ago, regarding the winter circle. And related to the winter circle, or very close to it, is the Pleaides constellation. So that's going to come up tonight when we're discussing the star myth. And then the next month in March is when we shifted from the south and we looked to the north to look at the circumboreal constellations and talked about Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. Okay, Ursa Major is the larger constellation, and within Ursa Major is the asterism Big Dipper. Okay, so that might ring some bells. All right, before moving on to the star myth, I wanted to acknowledge that, well, not only do I love fall, I think I probably said this during last October, I really enjoy fall. I actually really enjoy the dark time at night. Well, for stargazing is really helpful, and a lot of other attributes of the fall. But November is kind of special in the night sky because it's this period of transition, just like we would see in the spring, where we kind of say good night to a whole set of constellations and stars that we won't see again for a while. And then you get to say good morning to all of kind of a different set of constellations that you get to see every night all the way through the winter until spring. So here I've written good night summer, the summer triangle, and then good morning winter, the winter circle. And that's very reminiscent of the season that we're in, right? We're saying good night and goodbye to summer and hello to winter. Okay, so I have the shapes here. You can see it's not an exact circle, right? It's more of a winter football if you're into that kind of thing, or an oval. And on the right side, just a simple triangle that are three very bright stars. So I'll give you a second to kind of think about if you remember any of these names. You know, maybe you're already making notes. You can jot those things down. Okay, the summer triangle we went over relatively recently in September. So maybe you remember the names of these three stars. And then the winter circle we went over, as mentioned, in February. Okay, and so maybe you recognize some of the names of those stars. These three, you might recognize the pattern already as Orion's belt. Okay, so that might help get you started. Okay, enough making you hold on, and I'll give you all of those star names just to, so you can have those either written down or maybe take a screenshot. And of course, all this material is available for review later. The winter triangle is made up of, or sorry, the summer triangle is made up of the three brightest stars that we see at the summer that are up here at the zenith. They're relatively high overhead. First, Vega is present about at the zenith. And then by now, as it's setting, Deneb is up near the zenith. Okay. And then the winter circle, Capella, usually comes up in the east and then goes straight up to the straight overhead to the zenith, and then finally sets, where Orion stays relative and Sirius stay relatively low on the horizon. But let me go through a couple of slides here from Stellarium to show or to demonstrate this kind of good night and good morning sequence. So good night at 7 p.m. tonight. Okay, you probably don't go to bed at 7 p.m. But here's the three stars. You have Vega that's labeled here, Altair that's labeled here. And if you go up between them, up to the top of the screen, there's Deneb, right, of the Cygnus, of the Swan constellation, you might remember. So there's the summer triangle. And at 9 p.m., you can see it's starting to make its way down towards the horizon. And then by 11 p.m., Altair just barely right there on the horizon. They're almost ready to set. Okay, so certainly as you're going to bed between 7 and 11, you can say good night to the summer triangle tonight. Then on the other side of the sky, if we look now over to the east, I'm pointing over there to the east in my physical space because I've set my awareness. Over here in the east, at 7 p.m., you can start to see portions of the winter circle that are rising above the horizon. The easiest of those to pick out would be the star Capella. It'll be something like 35, almost 40 degrees to the east of the moon tonight. Pretty bright star. And in between those two, you can probably already see it here, is that tiny little cluster there, and that's the Pleaides. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Okay, so just attuning and relating yourself to Capella that's coming up. And then by 10 p.m., 3 hours later, most of the winter circle is above the horizon. Okay, so there's Orion's belt. There's the shoulder of Orion, or Betelgeuse, that reddish star. One of the knees of Orion, Rigel. Then if we go up to Aldebaran, over to Capella, and then down to the twin stars, the Gemini stars, Procyon, or excuse me, Castor and Pollux. Then if we fast forward a little bit more, so there's stars down here too that haven't risen yet, but if we fast forward to 1 a.m., the whole winter circle has come up above the horizon. So there's Procyon, the little dog, Sirius, Pollux and Castor, Capella's up there, Aldebaran, Rigel, and of course, Betelgeuse making the center there. So there's your practice again for tonight, right? If you had forgotten the winter circle because it's been so long. Now, in the morning, as you're waking up for your 6 a.m. yoga class, the whole winter circle is out there, basically where the summer triangle is as you go to sleep tonight at about 7 o'clock. So again, here's the whole winter circle from Aldebaran, Rigel, Sirius, Procyon, the Gemini twins, and Capella. I just think that that's a really neat story. And that, my friends, is a story, right? Notice how I made the little jingle, you know, good night, summer triangle, and good morning, winter circle, because these types of stories or rhymes or whatever it is, little jingles, they help us to remember some material like this that could kind of be dry or just feel like memorization. So I want to acknowledge that while astronomy is not astrology, you might be familiar with astrology. It's a whole wide lot of things, but creating some sort of narrative around the placement of the constellations and the movement of those through the night sky can actually help our human brain understand the story to help us remember. Okay, or story understand. So I just wanted to make that point tonight while talking about the cultural resource that we have of dark night skies, natural night skies, as well as leading into this topic of a mythology, right? As those myths are something, myths and legends are things that help us to remember the constellations in the night sky. Now I ask, is it actually remembering then? Is it actually remembering if you're recalling a story and a whole narrative where it actually becomes part of you, it becomes internalized? And that's far greater than just remembering. It's a type of knowing, many would argue. It's a different type of knowing about your place on this planet. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the awareness and process of Ursa Major first. Well, sort of combined for the awareness, but the process with just Ursa Major. So to set your awareness tonight, or for the following couple of nights, at about an hour after sunset. Sunset is about 5:20 my time tonight. So I'm going to set all of this stuff for about 6:30 to 7. If you look to the northwest quadrant, and then over towards the east, so there's a whole broad area of the night sky. We're crossing north, okay, pretty large area of the night sky. And you can actually see this myth or this story play out in a whole lot of different seasons, right? As long as you can see Ursa Major and the Pleiades, then you can kind of make out this myth or this drama. But I like looking at it in the fall, and you'll see, because the geometry works out a little bit better. Okay, and then also part of setting your awareness is acknowledging the phase, the moon phase, and tonight's like 97% full, 97% waxing. It's going to be totally full on Friday night. And you might look up there tonight and go, wow, that's a big bright moon. I think the moon is full. Technically, it's on Friday, but as we recognize, there's about 3 days before and 3 days after, or some mix of those, of the precise full moon, that the moon appears to be really full, you know, that 95% waxing. So at any one of those days, you might look up and call it a full moon, but technically it comes on Friday. And then remind yourself of your hand distances. Why? Because I'm going to give an example right now. Finding the Big Dipper. So going back to some of those older lectures if you need a little bit of help with that. But if you, again, set yourself to north, The dipper is actually pretty easy to find, right? It's got the big handle and then the cup on the edge, right? It just looks like a ladle, a big dipper. So if you find the Big Dipper, which is an asterism, part of the larger constellation, and then you find the two stars at the end of the cup, and then use your hands to go about 10 degrees to the east of the cup, you'll find the bear's shoulders, and then 10 more degrees, you'll find the bear's nose. So that's going to kind of help set our process as I bring up the stellarium slides. And then, of course, we want to put legs on the bear. If you go from the cup down, you can kind of illuminate and match up some legs. And if you go from the shoulders down, you can match up some legs. Okay, and then don't forget the tail of the bear. Yeah, the tail of the bear. Okay, bears don't have tails today, but that's one of the beautiful things about these star myths and legends that have stayed with us through thousands of years, is that many cultures have identified this feature in the night sky as a bear with a tail and big ears, like the ancestral Pleistocene cave bears that used to be well prevalent in many areas that humans were also living. Okay. Okay, so here's a sample from Stellarium. Here I'm looking to the north, northwest and northeast labeled here. There's the star Capella that's coming up over the northeast. There's Pleiades. And here we can make out the shape of the Big Dipper over here on the left side of the screen. You have the stars of the cup, or stars of the handle, and then stars of the cup. Now together, this all makes the asterism of the Big Dipper. And then, as I mentioned, if you go about 10 degrees to the east of the cup stars, you get to the stars of the shoulder of the bear. And then about another 10 degrees, you get over here to the tip of the nose. Okay, then we can also draw some legs from the back end of the cup down through the horizon, and then the front end of the shoulder down to the horizon. So let me put on a couple of lines to acknowledge that. There's the cup of the dipper. Okay, hopefully you're already seeing that. And then again, 10 degrees-ish to the east, and then 10 degrees more, you can see the tip of the nose. So I drew the top, the back of the bear, all the way over there through the shoulders, up to the tip of the nose, and then back. So geometrically, it's pretty simple, right? It's a simple bear. I also drew on the ears in here. As you look at this in the night sky, you can really make out these two little tiny stars that are between the nose and the shoulder that I like to call the bear's ears, right? So there's the feature bear's ears there. And then let's draw on the legs. There's the back legs. They come straight down from the end of the cup. And then there's two forks out to two similar bright stars. And then the front legs here. Okay, and if this is a little too fast, or maybe you're a little bit rusty, again, go back to that March presentation that's online, and I go through all of those details again and a little bit more slowly. Okay, so there's Big Dipper and the Ursa Major constellation of the Big Bear. Now, Pleiades, we should talk a little bit more about Pleiades. I've pointed it out a couple of times. It's always kind of been a side constellation that we've never really discussed. Tonight, I measured this on Stellarium, but I'm not all that confident in my measurement of the degrees on the computer. I'd rather have my hand up there. But about 26 degrees left of tonight's moon, so over to the east where you find the moon, you'll find the small constellation Pleiades. And chances are, as you've been stargazing in the past, you may have misidentified this or confused this as the Little Dipper. Okay, it's really common. People know that there's a Big Dipper, and then we also know there's a Little Dipper. So knowing that, but maybe never having found it, we look at this little constellation up there and we're just like, oh, Little Dipper. Okay, well, sorry to disappoint, it's not the Little Dipper. The Little Dipper is actually really close to the Big Dipper. Ursa Major is the Big Bear, and Little Dipper is an asterism of Ursa Minor, the Big Bear and the Little Bear. Okay, again, that's all in the March presentation. So it's not Little Dipper. It's actually known more as the Seven Sisters. okay, because there's 7 stars there. No, it's a little hard to count that on my wikipedia.org image here, because this is showing the brightness of all of these stars through a telescopic lens. So you get kind of this bleed out and other stars that you can't see with the naked eye. But over here in Stellarium in the upper right, I just grabbed this straight off of Stellarium, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stars. Okay. Now I've had, discussions with people in the past of which of the faint stars are actually the 7th. So if you look up at Pleiades, it's really hard to pick it out with the naked eye. If you use binoculars, any type of binoculars will work, whether they're fancy high-tech binoculars or just, dollar store binoculars. This star that's at the very end of what might look like is the handle here is easiest to see of the other faint stars. So I consider that the 7th star, the 7th sister. But as you can see, there's a couple more that are over there that you can also see with binoculars. So the 7 sisters quickly becomes like the 9, but 7 sisters. Then it's also known as M45. The M stands for Messier Objects, 45, just a number. And the Messier Objects are things that kind of like advanced stargazers, I guess you might call our amateur astronomers. There's kind of this list of the Messier Objects. I think there's exactly 100. I don't know. It's been a while since I've looked it up. But there's a lot of these objects that's kind of like a checklist. If you're really getting into this stuff, then people will actually, just like flowers or birds, they'll keep a checklist of things that they've observed. And M45 is one of those. It's really low on the low-hanging fruit and easy to see at night. Okay, so there's a little introduction to the Pleiades. Now, okay, let's talk a little bit more about the relationship between the two. So here's the Big Bear over here between northwest and north. You can imagine it right now that I've drawn the lines. And here's why I like looking at it in the fall, because it actually looks like the bear is walking along the ground. And I think that's pretty cool. Now, another relationship here is that, the pole star, everything spins around that pole star, okay? And uniquely, as Ursa Major is spinning around the pole star, Ursa Major's nose, the bear's nose, is always pointed towards Pleiades, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, it's a long ways across the night sky. It's something like, no, it's not. It's either 35 or 47 degrees. I mix these things up sometimes. But it's a long ways across the night sky to actually get to Pleiades. It's kind of easy to see here in Stellarium, and it's easiest to see in the fall. So if you go out tonight around 7 o'clock, it's nice and dark. Ursa Major has come up above the horizon. You can see Big Bear walking across the landscape, and then over there is Pleiades. Okay, so that's why I chose fall to look at this. Okay. So the mythology that I'm about to discuss or tell this story is not my story, right? It's not a story from peoples that I grew up with or peoples in my ancestry, but this is a story that I heard in 4th grade. Okay, as I've mentioned a couple of times already tonight, I grew up in South Dakota. And while I was in 4th grade, I went to school in Sturgis, South Dakota. And we took a field trip all the way over to, well, it's called Mato Tapila, or Bear Lodge in Lakota, but also known as Devil's Tower. It's actually a national monument, the first national monument designated by Teddy Roosevelt in 1906. But in 4th grade, I remember not only going there and seeing this impressive, huge rock sticking out of the plains. And I mean, it is impressive. You can see it for hundreds of miles around. So not only was that impressive, and some other kind of the nature-y things along in that, as well as hanging out with my friends and things. But what I was really impressed by was a story that a park ranger gave. And looking back on that, I have no idea if they were a volunteer, if they were a paid park ranger. I'm not really sure, but I'm so thankful for that experience that, we all sat in a big semicircle, and the representative of the park, who was a fairly animated person, went ahead and told us some of this mythology. And the story has always stuck with me, and I'm sure that bits and pieces of it have changed in my mind. I added this IndianCountryToday.com link up here, which talks about the differences between some of the tribal stories that are here. Mato Tipila was a very sacred mountain, and still is, to many people in the area that were also parts of different tribes and cultures. So you have a Lakota story, a Kiowa story, Arapaho, Crow. So there's several variations of the story here that all have some similarities, and one of those being the Great Bear. Okay, so I've remembering back to my 4th grade times, as well as being exposed to these stories, these cultural stories that people have passed down, and then also trying to relay this to my class in a fun way. I've kind of woven in a little bit of modern myth for children, or for my children particularly when we're going out there stargazing, but it's also been for other students, and now of course with you. So I wanted to tell a little bit about that myth. We started out with, so one day there were 7, 8 children that were out playing, 8 siblings, maybe 8, friends that were hanging out. These are all pictures of my kids. I took duplicates of the 2. But there was one smallest child, maybe the little brother. And the little brother was always trying to play with everybody else, right? And sometimes the bigger kids would just sort of ignore the littler kid, or maybe even tease the littler kid. And so little brother started to get really frustrated about this. And he'd always come back and say, hey, can I play? And then sometimes, they'd maybe make fun or not include, or maybe even the worst, bully by like pushing him around or anything like that. So you know how kids can be. So anyway, the kids are playing, 7 kids, and then little brother is off in the corner, and he's starting to get really grumpy at the way that the siblings are treating him. So as he's sitting over there and getting more and more sullen, and more grumpy, and more sorry for himself that he's not bigger and he can't play with all the older kids, he starts to get bigger. And he starts to get bigger, and he starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And next thing you know, little brother has grown into this gigantic behemoth bear with a tail, and walks over and lumbers over to go play with the other 7 siblings. And now the 7 siblings freak out, right? They see who they don't know as little brother, but they see little brother, the big bear, coming after them. And they immediately think that that big bear is coming after them to get them and to eat them. So they run away, and they're very scared. Okay. As they run away, they don't know where to go. It's the plains. Everything's flat around here. They found a big tree stump. And on that tree stump, all of the 7 siblings, they got together and they joined hands. And together, they all talked to Creator to help them out of this situation. How can we get out of this situation? And then Creator took that log and thrust it further and further and higher up into the sky. And then Big Bear, brother, came along and started continuing to scratch on the edge of that cliff. And so today, right, we see the leftovers of Devil's Tower, okay, that's there with the big claw marks of the bear down the side. That's how those claw marks go there. But the 7 siblings are just left up there at the top, okay? So Creator talked to them and said, you don't know this, but that big bear is actually your little brother. That's the little kid that you were not acknowledging as a part of your games. And he then was so frustrated that he turned into a big bear. And so you know this, and so you remember, and so your people, everyone remembers to always incorporate the littlest, to make a point to incorporate people younger than you. I'm going to take you 7 and put you up in the night sky as the 7 sisters, or the Pleaides constellation, to be a reminder to all people that it's not okay to pick on or bully or to exclude the littlest person around, that they just as much deserve to be a part of the group. Okay, so I like that lesson that's taught in there. And then also Big Bear, then creator, after Big Bear got tired and walked off, went over there on the other side of the Black Hills to become this mountain that's here, Bear Butte. And then eventually creator took the bear after his nice long sleep and put the Big Bear up into the night sky to be a symbol for people to also remember that bear generally is a docile creature that isn't going to come after you. It maybe just wants to play, but also if it's provoked. If you provoke the bears, if you provoke some of the wildlife, some of the other carnivores that are out there, then it can have devastating consequences. So I like that the two constellations, these two stories, are actually representative of something, some kind of social behavior between us to help us all get along. And that's just one example of a star myth or a star legend. And this is one of my favorites, right? I've heard it when I was a small child. That along with it, it has some sort of lesson to be learned. Okay, a lesson to be learned. And so hopefully by elaborating on that story and going through that story again, that comes from peoples of the Midwest, different variations of this, and I kind of have my own flavor to it, that can help us to remember that not only the placement of the constellations, but their relationship between one another in the night sky, and also their movement through the night sky. So we'll go back to the stellarium slide here just to recap the placement of that legend. So here's the Big Bear. Okay, there's the legs that are coming down and it's stomping across the landscape. And I don't know, to me, it looks pretty happy, right? It doesn't look scary. And over here is the Pleiades. And now forever and ever and ever and ever, as we watch the stars spin around the night sky, you can find Big Dipper and find the tip of that nose of Ursa Major, the Big Bear, and point that over to the Pleiades constellation. And hopefully the next time you do that, you share that with somebody in your life. Maybe that's a child, maybe that's a significant other, maybe that's your grandmother, but sharing the night sky is a cultural resource for all of us. And so then again, I'll remind you, if you enjoy the stars, become a dark night sky advocate, okay? Well, with that, let's do this again. December 15th is the next stargazing presentation of this year. And next year, for 2022, the Friends of the Owyhee, we're going to kind of stagger our stargazing events to do about one every other month, and the month in between to do kind of more of a open webinar on a topic relating to the Owyhee. So for instance, maybe animals, plants, and all of the above. Okay, a little bit of a teaser there. A lot of our events are coming out in January of 2022 is when we'll start to show and reveal all of the plans that we have for the year ahead for adventuring, for stewarding, and being a conservation advocate. Okay, so there's a little bit of a recap: gear for stargazing, setting your intention and process, the importance of natural night skies, and then, looks like I didn't change the end there, but Ursa Major and Pleiades. So there's a couple more minutes till the end of the hour. If you have some questions, we can start out with those that are in the comments, and then if you'd like to unmute, then you can certainly ask a question verbally. So let's see, folks, you can see where they're coming in from. Thank you. Yes, and that's right. Lori was the first between our respective libraries to get those kits and to pioneer that process so she could get sky quality meters in the hands of citizens. So thank you. Then, good, thanks for the comment. And then Bob said, did anyone see the Leonids? That's a good question. Maybe if anybody did in there in the comments, you can talk a little bit about that. But the Leonids are usually when things end in the Eids, it's one of the many meteor showers that occur through the year, like the Perseids that we heard a lot about this summer, because they were forecasted to be some of the biggest and brightest really of the last decade. And the Leonids are meteors that were coming in, a meteor shower, meteors that are coming into the atmosphere, or shooting stars, we might call them, that are emanating from the Leo constellation. Okay, and so Bob's asking, did anyone see any of these? And I'll tell you, if you haven't yet, you can still actually, almost any time of the year on the night sky, you can find a meteor shower that's kind of either at some phase. Okay? Either it's just beginning or just ending, but you can still actually see the Leonids if you're out there in a nice dark night sky looking towards the Leo constellation. You might be able to pick up a few. Okay, and directly, Bob, to answer your question, yes. Okay, actually, my kids and I all saw, kids and wife and I, we all saw a really amazing, super long-lasting bright one. It's great. Okay. Oh, Casey asks a question about the geologic origins of the mountain known as Devil's Tower National Monument. And it's there's three primary interpretations. This is one of the things I love about geology, is there's usually multiple working hypotheses that these, people go back and forth collecting data for which one is the most has the most data behind it. But it's kind of easiest to think about in all three of these contexts as a volcanic neck. Okay, not exactly that there was a giant volcano there that came up and this is the neck of it that eroded. That is one of the alternative one of the hypotheses. But that while there were other rocks of the Sundance Formation that were a little bit higher, this is an intrusion of magma that came in and was kind of the conduit of volcano that probably never erupted, and it froze there as what we call a laccolith, a geologic laccolith. So it is volcanic in origin. The rock itself, I think, is called a phonolite. It's really similar to an andesite intermediate composition rock. But yeah, thanks for asking about that, Casey. And then Laura Jean, in the winter western sky, there's a star that changes color. What is the name of that star? I'm not sure that I can recall. Winter western sky. I can think of the star Sirius, that's one of the brightest stars in the night sky, as it comes up from the horizon, generally because as the light's coming in at a horizontal angle through the horizon, the star can be dimmed a little bit. But I have noticed that Sirius can be a little bit more cooler white, or even a little bit yellowish when it's lower on the horizon. But as it rises, it's very bright blue. So that might be the star that you're referring to. Or maybe there is a star out there that I'm not familiar with that has sort of dual color personality. Okay, thanks, Laura Jean, for the question. If anyone else would like to ask a question, we have a minute before the last of the hour. You can go ahead and unmute and ask verbally. I'll stop presenting my screen there. Looks like a few folks heard that this is the end of the hour. So, well, thank you all very much for joining another round of Introduction to Stargazing tonight, and look forward to seeing you all in December, or maybe you might just catch the recording of that one. So I think it's already up on Eventbrite, so you can take the opportunity right now to go ahead and sign up and see any of our other Eventbrite opportunities. Okay, all right, y'all, thank you very much, and keep looking up. See you next time.